Hey there, it's Silver, and I'm finally taking a peek at Monster Train 2 in honor of the new DLC that just recently hit. I've been pretty excited to take a look at this because I feel like Monster Train was a super unique take on a deck builder, but also, unlike most successful new ideas, it didn't really have much in the way of copycats. It was unique at the time, and it remains unique today, which isn't an easy thing to find in a genre where we often see new games building from what came before. All genres build like that, but roguelites in particular are a very iterative genre with loads of framework built over years of successful ideas. Whenever something new really makes an impact, you can expect that some of the things that were new about it will be iterated on in future games, made by people that love what it did and want to try their hand at their own version. Oftentimes, the best results are from games where they take some good foundational mechanics and tweak them while adding substantial ideas of their own. For instance, we all know Slay the Spire was one of the most successful and influential deck builders out there, but we also see games like, say, Touhou The Lost Branch of Legend that take the formula and change up tons of it, melding it with new and interesting ideas in the form of including bullet hell shmup mechanics. As a result, you get a solid entry in the genre that manages to stand out and do its own thing, while still clearly building on what came before it. This, I feel, is where Monster Train came from. The first game took the concept of a roguelite deck builder and meshed it with lane defense and almost tower defense-like mechanics. Basically, this genre is usually offensive in nature, with the main goal being to defeat increasingly difficult enemies to get to a final boss. But in Monster Train, you're on defense. You have a train with 4 floors, and the top one holds your heart. The goal is to place creatures on the other 3 floors to stop any monsters from getting up to the heart and damaging it. You'll have various factions to play, each with plenty of creatures, different themes, and lots of spells to cast before each battle to get an advantage. Each faction will have several mechanics to use and some keywords on cards that are unique to them, and the idea behind making a build in these games is to maximize some of those card types while creating powerful synergies with your units. You'll travel through a map where, after each battle, you can choose one of 2 tracks, each with different shops and upgrades, depending on what you feel your build needs the most. Then you'll hit the next battle with even more difficult enemies, and also face some bosses along the way that are much more challenging. Eventually, you'll test your complete build against the final bosses and see if you did it well enough to survive. The sequel adds several big new things to contend with, like all new factions to play, boss variants to face, and faction-wide mechanics to mess with, like Forge Points or the Moon Phase. Of course, it's always nice to just have all the new factions, enemies, and bosses, but in such a mechanically driven genre, you want more than just a refresh. And there is much more. I have lots to say about the gameplay here, but first, this game looks great. The original already looked great, in my opinion, and this is going for a similar style, but with more vibrant visuals and higher detail in every aspect. It seems like they basically took what they learned from making Monster Train and applied that experience to the sequel with the goal of sharpening the art in every sense and adding lots of extra personality with more visual representation of that personality. If you look at screenshots from the original and shots from this one after the other, you can track the evolution of the style from the lovely, somewhat simple and cartoonish look they had to this newer and more densely detailed digital art. One thing that's very important is making sure the factions all have their own visual themes that look different from each other. Not only do you want to be able to easily tell them apart for gameplay, but to make each one more interesting to play, you want them to look and feel individual. I think they did a great job at this. Each faction has a certain design cue, dominant colors, and even their card art features elements that help tie them together. The Banished are a host of angels with a strong blue-orange contrast in their design, often combined with armor and wings. The Pyreborn are draconic in design and use a combo of red, black, and gold coloration. The Luna Coven, my favorite clan, obviously has lots of moon themes, but also uses lots of pink, purple, blue, and green in most creatures. They also have a theme of swoopy spiral designs, round edges, and fairy aesthetics. Next is the Underlegion, which is a mushroom faction themed around decay. They use plenty of green shades and also some vivid reds, and much of their art looks very organic and fungal, naturally. After that, we've got the Lazarus League, which is a mad science-themed clan of odd creatures and dangerous reanimation. They use lots of colors, but really like their nuclear green ooze, and their creatures are tied together with a theme of being horrific abominations against nature. Finally, we have the new clan that was just added by the DLC, the Railforged. These guys have a strong industrial steampunk vibe with heavy use of gray and brass in their designs. Also expect lots of sparks and lava in their card art. In addition to all this, you'll also want the enemies to look cool, and they very much do, in my opinion. They went out of their way to design all sorts of strange and beautiful things that want to murder you. The color schemes are all over the place, covering many different shades, but often having white as an important part of their look, and any colors they use will often be super saturated to the point of looking unnatural. They really do look awesome, and I've also never had the problem of easily mistaking one enemy type for another. They have plenty of details and differences that ensure each one is memorable enough not to blend in. Also, the DLC added a new game mode called Soul Savior, which has its own host of enemies. These are all themed around twisted plant life and use royal tones for lots of color variety. The big ones, though, are, of course, the bosses. Each different boss looks unique and has lots of art and animation detail in how they look and move. Many of them even have variants that switch up their appearance. As you get deeper into a run, expect the bosses to become much more visually impressive until eventually becoming these bizarre, otherworldly eldritch things that just look like they're going to kill you. All UI elements and other things in the world look nice. Nothing feels out of place or oddly difficult to use or understand. The cloudy, heavenly environment you'll be scooting around in during a run is lovely, and your train looks like a cool industrial arcane thing that's sturdy and battle-ready. Many of the rooms you can put in the train during a run also look pretty cool and add some extra depth to each one, making them more complex floors without being too busy and distracting. But in addition to all of the fantastic visual elements, you also need some music. In that regard, they went for a pretty interesting style. The music here uses lots of strings and percussion with plenty of other instruments thrown in to create music that flows along in the background as a run progresses and changes genre a few times as it goes. It's actually pretty neat how smoothly it goes between styles while tying them all together with certain instruments that always appear. You'll have a battle with strings and some slight electronic elements, and then a boss fight happens and it shifts to something more like symphonic metal. Like suddenly Nightwish Angelic Host Edition comes on where you get beaten up by a mound of eyes and snot. The downtime is also nicely scored with pretty chill songs for screens like the main menu and especially the in-run map screen between battles. Notably, this music also has a bit of something else in it that adds a little anxiety, like some distant tribal music that combines with the chill parts to remind you this is a battle and to feel a bit uneasy. Overall, the presentation is top-notch, I'd say, which is expected from Shiny Shoe given their track record, but it's still nice to acknowledge it when you see it. I'm actually a big fan of all the differences in motifs among the clans, which is why I spent some time detailing them a bit up there. I wouldn't be surprised if the artists felt that the biggest challenge was to create a solid visual identity for each clan while making sure they didn't blend together. There's a lot of creativity on display when it comes to how units, enemies, and cards look, and I just really enjoy that compartmentalized theming where you split it into factions and have each do their own thing and contribute to a sort of a unified style. Alright, so the gameplay here has quite a bit to talk about due to the large number of moving parts that each clan uses differently to enable the player to build them successfully. The main idea that I touched on a bit earlier is that you have a train with 4 floors. The top floor contains your Pyre Heart. Damage to it is persistent across the run, and you lose if it gets destroyed. You can place units on the other 3 floors to defend against the enemies. They come in waves and start at the lowest floor. They'll fight any units you have deployed there, and any survivors will then move up a floor. They'll keep doing this until all of them are gone, or they reach the heart, which can defend itself with a pretty good piercing attack, but it won't help against the big guys with hundreds of HP. Managing all these floors as enemies flood in is where the real challenge comes from, as well as when you can see the effectiveness of your current strategy. You'll start out by picking 2 clans to bring, a primary and a secondary. Your primary clan determines most of your starting deck as well as the champion unit you get access to, a powerful upgradable unit that you always draw when starting a battle and is always free to cast. The secondary choice splashes in some cards to start with, and you'll have several opportunities to get cards from that secondary clan as you go. Obviously, the first aspect of your build is chosen right here before you even start. Some clans work together better than others, and synergizing them well is key to victory. You can also choose a Covenant level here, which is a scaling difficulty system that goes from 0 to 10 and will allow you to unlock much more stuff. Finally, you can choose a Pyre Heart as well. You only have the basic one to start with, but can eventually unlock others, each one having different health and attack values, as well as potent passive effects. They also tend to look really cool, and even their attack changes based on how they look. You'll then be put on a track in the fluffy Cool Whip clouds and be tasked with the very difficult objective of not dying. There are several different choices for each boss you can face, and all that will be chosen when you start a run, and you can actually see the whole map to the end. When you first start on the map, there will be 2 buildings you can visit prior to the first battle. A Hoard that will give you a choice between 2 artifacts. These are powerful items that often affect major mechanics. Each clan has some specific to them, and when you choose between the 2 offered, they can be from either of your clans or a pool of clanless ones. The other building is called a Railforged. These are valuable to find. They will allow you to choose between 2 upgrade paths for your champion unit. Each champion has 3 different paths with 3 tiers each. The paths will make changes to their health and damage, as well as changing or adding to their abilities. Some paths will give them active skills, and others will significantly enhance a clan-specific keyword they use. Once you choose a path, the next forge you find will give a choice between another path and a higher tier version of the one you already have. As the tiers go up, they'll get stronger versions of everything that path offers, so a tier 3 upgraded unit will be very strong indeed. The first battle is a simple one, only a few waves of weaker enemies. You do have to be able to beat it with just a starting deck, after all, but things quickly ramp up after that, with harder enemy types and more waves per combat to contend with. You'll notice that there is a merciful break in non-boss battles where before the last wave shows up, you get a turn with no further spawns to do things like ready your rooms for the last wave and mop up stragglers. Each battle is actually themed, with sets of enemies that share a common mechanic or buff type or something like that. You may run into a heavy defense and thorns battle or a nasty, unstable, and reanimate group. These will be testing your deck building skills to see how you can handle varying conditions and challenges. There are also trials to opt into. Before standard battles, there will be a trial you can choose to turn on. These will give you lots of extra gold, but will do something to make the fight harder for you. The idea is to weigh the challenge along with the enemy types you'll be facing and decide whether or not you think you can handle it for the extra cash. Trials can be pretty simple, like adding a stack of reanimate to each enemy, or much more involved, like making the enemies spawn on all 3 floors at once, rather than always at the bottom. The gold reward scales up with the complexity of the trial, and there are some unlocks you can get based around doing these when you can as well. So, what do you spend all that gold on? Well, like I mentioned, you're on a track, and it splits into 2 after each battle, with both sides having their own reward types. Pick a side and enjoy your rewards. The tracks will then join back up for the next fight. The possible rewards include things like more light forges for champion upgrades and more artifact selections, just like the 2 buildings you started the run with, but there are also pyre health restorations that heal you for 30%, armories that give you a choice between some equipment for your units and some rooms for your train, stashes of gold to grab, and other things like 2 different types of vortices, one that allows you to duplicate a card, and another that lets you remove up to 2 cards for free. There are also unit banners that allow you to recruit new units and will be aligned to either one of the clans you started with. Then there are the merchants. These are important for building your team. This is where your gold is mostly spent. Each merchant type will have several things for sale and can also have their inventory refreshed for a cost. They'll even offer card removal services. The units and spells in your deck have these sockets on the left side of the card, usually 2, and they are for the upgrades that you can purchase at these merchants. The Merchant of Magic will sell gems that you can plop onto your spells to upgrade them. These can be simple things like small increases to power or larger boosts that cause the spell to be consumed for that battle when used. You can decrease their cost, make them create a temporary copy in your hand when cast, or even double the buff and debuff stacks they apply. Merchants of Steel are the same idea, but with unit upgrades instead, allowing you to increase your unit's stats and add a large variety of different buffs and effects to them. Shout out to the rare and expensive Titan Stone that halves the damage a unit takes completely. The Merchant of Arms sells equipment and rooms, but also allows you to merge 2 pieces of equipment to produce 1 item with the effects of both. Super useful since you can only equip a unit with 1 thing at a time, generally. Finally, there's the Merchant of Trinkets, which sells artifacts. Expect to pay a lot for these, but given how powerful they tend to be, it's well worth it to grab one that meshes with your strategy. The final map node works a bit differently. It's called the Celestial Alcove. You know how on Slay the Spire style maps you have those nodes with like a question mark usually that are some kind of random event? Well, that's what these are. When you go to one, there's a large number of possible events you could encounter. The battles separate the map into rings, and each ring has a different smattering of events it could throw at you, as well as each event having different weightings that make some more common than others. The events vary wildly in what they offer. Some are new cards, often of a rare choice. Some may affect your units in some way. Others can give you stuff that you can only get from these events, like the Looming Dark Shard, one of the strongest artifacts in the game. Many also contain a risk-reward element, a choice between something nice for free or something very nice for a cost. You will often have to pay in pyre health for some of these, and others may add cards to your deck that are like curses, purely negative, usually called blights. Even though there are sometimes negative effects tied to these, it's always worth checking them out. Due to the strong nature of many of the rewards, and often the nastiest choices have an option to simply leave and get nothing if you really don't like the idea of the cost you may be paying. During battles, you'll have a free deployment phase at the start, which lets you draw some units and play them to get your defense started. Your champion will always be drawn here and will always cost 0 Ember to play. Each room has a capacity displayed in orange pips at the top, and each unit has those pips across the top of their card to tell you how many spaces it needs to be summoned. You'll start with 5 capacity on each floor generally, but this can be expanded in several ways as the run continues. This means you have to fit your strategy into the limits of each floor and what you can summon there. You can also choose the order of the units. When you summon them, units at the front are attacked first, unless the enemy has sniper. Units can be given armor, which will take damage before health, and there are many kinds of active and passive abilities, buffs and debuffs that can potentially come into play. A good strategy involves clever use of these to make monstrous defenders and attackers to wipe up enemies quickly and efficiently. You'll find that most effects stack together in predictably useful ways, and you can often use them to cook up units with ridiculous synergies. Once the battle starts, you'll draw a hand every turn that can include spells, units, rooms, and equipment. The resource you use to pay for cards is called Ember, and you'll get a certain amount per turn that can be enhanced later. Spells are going to be where a lot of your Ember goes, and these can have a billion uses and effects. They can directly damage, they can heal, buff, debuff, or even other obscure effects related to your clan. Equipment, as I mentioned, can be slapped on a unit, but only one per dude, and it tends to augment health and damage while adding other buffs and special effects. Rooms are interesting. You play these on any of the 3 non-pyre rooms you have, and it changes how they look and adds extra effects to them. These can be hugely beneficial to include and can do everything from giving every unit on the floor stacks of a buff to greatly expanding its unit capacity, or even assembling a copy of the front unit on the floor and sending it to the floor below. Because surviving enemies move up a floor at a time, mobility for your team can be pretty important. Shift effects move them around on the current floor, but there's also the ascend and descend keywords, which will move units between floors. There's also the powerful flight ability, which can move a unit anywhere, usually with a cooldown. Some units have active skills they can use. These are always on a turn-based cooldown and can also be given by equipment. Once you get to the last wave of a battle, a mini-boss monster will spawn in and start harassing you. These are noticeably stronger than the standard enemies of that battle and may take some extra preparation to take down while keeping your pyre safe. After a battle, you'll get some gold, including a bonus if you did the trial, as well as a choice of cards, one for each of your chosen clans. But, of course, the real challenges aren't these standard fights, even though they can get quite difficult. It's the bosses you'll face as you ascend. Boss fights work a bit differently. I mentioned that you'll be able to see the bosses you'll face right at the beginning. Certain rings will contain these bosses, and each one has a few options it could choose on a given run. Many bosses can also appear in different variants. These give the boss a cool-looking makeover to fit the new mechanical theme and change up how they work, making you have to adapt to fighting them differently. I will say the balance here is a bit odd. At times, some boss variants are drastically more difficult than others, and the boss Strix and Hallow seems genuinely overtuned. Every time I've faced that specific boss, no matter how well I was doing beforehand or how OP I felt, it always ends in a hard loss every single time. They're weirdly difficult in comparison to other bosses and variants of that area. During a boss fight, the boss will spawn on the very first wave, along with many waves of enemies. The boss will shift between floors randomly every turn, but won't attack the pyre yet. You've got to defeat the increasingly difficult waves while also inconveniencing the boss if you can. Any debuffs and damage you can pile onto them before the end is helpful. It's actually possible to defeat the boss before the end wave, but that can be very tricky to pull off. It's hard enough just to reach the boss with your units, as it will always be last in line on the floor, meaning you have to destroy all enemies before reaching them. After hopefully surviving the onslaught on the final wave, the boss will go down to the bottom floor and gain a status called Relentless. Relentless makes it so, instead of fighting the units once and then moving up a floor, the boss and all present enemies will attack until either all of your units are dead or they are. If they kill all friendlies, then they'll destroy that floor and move up, continuing the relentless assault until reaching your pyre. This is panic mode. It means a 3-turn limit until the boss starts attacking your pyre, and you aren't likely to survive that unless you severely damage the boss beforehand. The idea is that you spend the waves bolstering your defenses and preparing for the big relentless phase at the end, so that when it arrives you can handle it. Friendly and enemy units have a preview of exactly how much damage they'll take under current conditions, and the number simply turns into an X if that unit will be destroyed. This is a really useful bit of info, and it allows you to see how your plan will shake out before pressing end turn. You can also undo the whole turn at any point and try to do it better, which is super appreciated as a mechanic, but you still need to be careful as it does only go back one turn. If you survive the boss, the end battle rewards get a bit of an upgrade. You'll get plenty of gold as well as a rare card choice and a boss artifact. These are really nice. They all affect your pyre in some way. All of them increase its max health and damage, making it more survivable, but each one also does something extra, like increasing the amount of ember you have to spend per turn, or giving all floors increased capacity. These are necessary upgrades as they represent a sort of persistent power increase for the whole run. Eventually, if you keep building and surviving, you'll face the final boss, who looks really cool in all his variants, and if you beat him, you can go into another even more final boss fight that works quite a bit differently, but I'm not going to spoil that. It is tied to several unlocks, though. This is a hard game, in my opinion, and it'll probably take you several runs for your first win. I find the game even more difficult than the first Monster Train. But, as with many roguelites, it doesn't end there. There's an ascending difficulty system you can start getting into called a Covenant rank. You'll start with the ability to play ranks 0 and 1, and the rest unlock in order as you beat the previous one, going all the way up to 10. Each rank adds unique extra challenges to a run, stacking together until you reach the truly cruel rank 10. Rank 1 will make all enemies a bit stronger and add some random cards into your starter deck, but as you go up the ranks, battles will have more waves added to them, bosses will get bonus stats, and some will gain new mechanics entirely. Disadvantageous cards will get added to your deck, and at rank 9, your pyre just straight up takes 30% damage before you've even fought anything. So if you want challenge and are quite good at deck builders, then I think this has you pretty well covered. One of the main things I personally look for in a deck builder is diversity in keywords and mechanics. I want there to be a lot of different things I can build around. The variety here is very high, with loads of mechanical types to try out, and the refreshed clan system adds to that a lot. It's cool to have these factions, all with specific characteristics and playstyles tied to them, and the ability to choose 2 per run means you get to explore the builds of 2 different archetypes. They also added run-wide mechanics to each faction that kind of remind me of like miniature versions of campaign mechanics from the Total War Warhammer games. For instance, the Pyreborn have the Dragon's Hoard. Certain cards and units of theirs can generate this resource, and they keep it between battles. They can choose to cash it in for various bonuses, and the more they stack up before cashing it, the better the rewards are. Some of their cards also consume it for effects, like Pyre Healing. My favorite clan, the Luna Coven, has the Moon Phase mechanic. It switches between new and full moons every turn, and many cards have extra powerful effects on one of the phases. There are also some that do something every time the phase changes. Another important aspect of the roguelite is the meta progression, and it works in an odd way here. The first layer is that every clan has a level. Whenever you finish a run, you get points for all the battles you manage to beat. You'll get some bonus points if you completed trials, and for how much gold you had by the end. These points are then distributed to both of the clans you used on that run as experience. Your primary gets all of it, while the secondary receives half. Get enough XP and they level up, which unlocks new cards to find when you play as them again. Also, at level 5 for each clan, you'll unlock a second champion choice you can try out. All clans level up to 10 max, but there's a good amount of stuff to earn for each that'll make your future runs with them more diverse. But importantly, there aren't so many things locked behind the system that a clan feels gimped or severely lacking if you haven't played them enough. An easy trap to fall into with unlock systems like this. However, the main meta progression is held by the Pyre Hearts. I mentioned, like 45 minutes ago, that you start with a basic Pyre but can unlock many others while playing, each one having different stats and appearances with potent passive effects. One may allow you to copy cards at any merchant. Another may make it so that drafting new cards causes them to always come equipped with an upgrade. Another still can cause all of your units to gain permanent attack power every time they slay an enemy. Unlocking these pyres is considered a big milestone, and the total number you've unlocked determines how far you've progressed in the story and what mechanical stuff you've earned. You'll see a counter on the bottom of the screen when you go back to the base that tells you what the next threshold is for the number of pyres unlocked. Meeting that threshold will give you some new story cutscenes to watch, and sometimes unlocks new mechanics. For instance, at 6 total pyres unlocked, you'll unlock the ability to play as all of the clans from the first game, which is pretty huge. This means that progression in this game is extremely slow, as pyres are hard to unlock. They all tend to take a while, and some require you to do things that you won't be able to achieve at first because they're very difficult. I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of the pyre unlock system. They take forever to get, unnecessarily so in my opinion, and that means the stuff you need them to unlock is glacially paced and will take a long time to get. Unlocking new clans tends to be pretty reasonable. Leveling them is a bit of a time investment, but not too bad, so it feels strange to have these super important unlocks that define the meta progression of the entire game be so incredibly slow to obtain. There are even 3 locked behind defeating the optional boss I'm still not spoiling, something that I feel a majority of players aren't going to be able to do for many hours of runs and unlocks. But I also understand what they're going for with the system. Giving players longer term goals to achieve is generally fine, and I get why they do it like this, but it can still be frustrating to have entire things like doubling your clan variety placed behind these goals that feel like they're going to take a long time. There are also some extra ways to alter runs, by the way. You can apply various mutators to make things easier or harder if you'd like, although they do limit your progression. And there's also the dimensional challenges, a large number of differing ways to change how runs feel. Many of them have both advantages and disadvantages given to the player, and some are extremely hard. The game has received some impressively large updates that have added substantial amounts of content since its release, but it has also just received its first paid DLC in the form of Destiny of the Railforged. This DLC adds a new clan to play, as well as the fully featured new game mode to try your hand at. It also came along with the big 2.0 patch for free that added things like a revamped Wormkin clan from the DLC of the first game. So how does the new clan play? The Railforged are, as you'd expect from the name, a very industrious clan with a focus on robotic units. Their champions focus on things like equipment, even allowing for extra slots, the burst mechanic, which are temporary extra attacks, and the forge mechanic. Their units are various types of machine and turret, with lots of armor and some appearances of the new smelt keyword. Their spells are mostly support spells that enhance units by applying armor, burst, or granting forge points. The headlining new mechanic with these guys would be the forge point counter. Some spells and other actions will give you forge points, which are stored on the left side of the screen. Whenever you play a unit or an equipment, your points are spent, boosting the stats for each point. You can toggle spending them on or off at any point so that you can build up a large amount at once to spend on a huge ridiculous unit if you want. There are also spells that consume it. One in particular gave me the wonderful experience of using 99 forge points to cast a 3500 damage spell on some poor boss angel that didn't stand a chance. Their other mechanics are fun too. Smelt lets you consume a card in your hand, getting rid of it for that battle, but getting forge points and ember to spend equal to that card's cost. There's even a unit that acts as a factory, which produces infinite metal spiders and sends them to the floor below. Their equipment can be really nasty, as it scales very well with forge points, and their unique artifacts can empower all of their mechanics, including making your forge points count for more, and expanding room space to allow their factory units to be more efficient. I think the Railforged are a great addition to the game and worth a DLC to add. They're super fun and have enough unique mechanics to them that they feel fully integrated into the group of clans available. I think they're also really fun to theorycraft with for what clan you want as a secondary when running them. I did a Railforged/Luna Coven run because it sounded stupid and like it wouldn't work very well, but turns out things like Mage Blade and Glass Cannon multi-attack units benefit massively from their forge point system, and the Luna equipment can become pretty monstrous when forged as well. In addition to the lovely new clan, we also have that new game mode, which is called Soul Savior. You can go on a run in this mode anytime from the main camp, and if you thought the main game was hard, oh boy. The main gimmick of this mode are the souls you can unlock by playing it. You'll only start with 1, but there are lots to find, and you can bring a total of 3 on a run once you have them. Some of them attach to spells, others to units, and a few more simply have their effect by choosing them. They're very strong upgrades that can define your strategy when applied with some smarts, and you're going to need them. The rail splits into 5 paths this time, with 4 bosses at the corners and the final boss in the middle that you can only get to once the other 4 are gone. The bosses have very complex mechanics and extremely threatening groups of enemies to face. When you choose one of the 4 paths, you'll do some fights leading up to eventually facing the boss, and then you'll go back to the center and choose the next one. All enemies here are new and exclusive to this mode. They can be quite nasty to deal with, and pull from basically all available mechanics to make a challenging and diverse roster of things which want to eat you. The thing that makes this mode so challenging, though, isn't actually the enemies or the bosses, even though those are very hard. It's how you choose who to fight. When choosing a boss, it's not just about their mechanics and if you think you can currently handle them, it's that they cast a sort of curse on everything when you beat them. While selecting your target, it'll also show you a list of 3 things that beating that boss will do. These challenges will stay for the rest of the run and pile up on each other as you down more bosses. These are often seriously debilitating effects that are going to change how you have to build to survive. Good luck braving all all that and then facing the final boss. It's a serious challenge, but one with really fun mechanics and creative enemy design, which blunts the pain just a little bit. I think the DLC adds enough content of a high enough quality to justify the price tag of only $10. Pretty reasonable to me. And so, finally, at the end, I can say I feel Monster Train 2 isn't only a worthy successor to a great game, but that it manages to be great all over again with fresh ideas and enjoyable new ways to build. There's a lot of game here, something that could reasonably last some folks triple-digit hours if they really click with it. But even for everyone else, it's such a fantastic deck builder that you'll be able to get plenty of fun time out of it if you like the genre. The game is $25, or your regional equivalent, the same price as the first game, and considering it's got like double the content and very high polish, I'd say they earned the right to price it that way perfectly well. The Steam store link will be down below. I'm super impressed if you made it this far, by the way, so thank you for that. I don't generally ask because it can be obnoxious, but if you liked what I do, feel free to throw some positive engagement my way. It does genuinely help quite a bit. You know how the system is. It loves comments and thumbs and subs. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.